When you get angry, do you fire off that message immediately? When you fall in love, does logic fly out the window? When you see a flashy investment opportunity, does your gut scream, do it, do it? Some people call this the eternal battle between the limbic brain and the cortex. But modern neuroscience says the story is much more interesting and frankly much more complex than that. Every day, your brain holds a silent election between emotion and reason. You think you're making decisions, but your brain might have a slight disagreement here. Let's set up the stereotype. On one side, the limbic person, emotional, intuitive, prone to risk, fast reactions. On the other side, the cortex person, logical, analytical, disciplined, future-focused, and full of self-control. Some people follow their feelings, some people follow logic. Most people even think they know which one they are already. Sounds simple, right? It's the perfect personality test. There's just one problem. Neuroscientists don't actually think your brain works this way, like at all. For decades, scientists believed your brain was divided into ancient instincts and modern intelligence. In the 1960s, Dr. Paul MacLean, a neuroscientist, proposed the Triune Brain theory. According to this famous theory, a prehistoric animal still lives inside your skull. Layer 1, the reptile brain, for survival. Layer 2 is the limbic system, for emotions. Layer 3 is the cortex, for rational thinking. You can go outside and classify all the people into limbic people, cortex people, and reptile people. It's a beautiful story. It's neat. It makes for great diagrams in textbooks, but it's wrong. Not simple wrong with capitalized letters like Donald Trump tweets. It's fundamentally wrong. Now, we need to talk about amygdala. If you ask most people, they would say amygdala is the fear center of the brain. Well, that's not actually true. Your amygdala doesn't ask whether something is true. It asks whether it matters. It's not just a fear switch. It's an importance detector. It scans for threats and fears, yes, but also for rewards, opportunities, and social relevance. Before you can think, your brain has already decided what deserves your attention. That is why a random notification from your phone can derail your concentration. That is why a text from someone you have crush on makes your heart race, even if you're trying to play it cool. The amygdala is looking at the world and shouting, hey, pay attention to this one. Amygdala doesn't care about truth. It cares about survival and significance. Now, let's talk about the prefrontal cortex. The common myth is that the cortex is the logical hero fighting against the emotional monster, that it sits on the chair, cool and calculating, editing out all the messy feelings. But actually, the prefrontal cortex isn't the voice of logic. It's the voice of restraint. Let's take a real-life example. When you hear a notification, amygdala says, reply now, immediately. While on the other hand, cortex says, just relax, wait a moment, and let's think about it. Another example, when you pass by a confectionery and you see your favorite cupcake, amygdala would say, buy it and eat the cake right now, immediately. While on the other hand, the cortex says, remember your diet? You will regret this later. What am I trying to say here is that the prefrontal cortex doesn't extinguish the emotion, it regulates it. Basically, intelligence is not the ability to think and calculate like a machine. It's the ability to pause. Wisdom often begins with a few extra seconds of waiting. Now, some of you may think that being a cortex person is way better than a limbic person, but I've got bad news for you. Here is the uncomfortable reality for you. All humans react emotionally first. Every single one. The difference isn't whether you feel or not. You're not supposed to turn off your feelings. The difference is the step 2. Most people don't reason their way into decisions. They reason their way into defending their decisions. First we feel, then we explain. We rationalize what we have already decided based on our feelings. You don't check your phone because you need to see the time. You check it because you feel a microdose of anxiety or curiosity, and then your prefrontal cortex provide the excuses for that decision. You don't date someone because of a pro and con list. You date them because of a gut feeling, and then you ask your prefrontal cortex to write a pro and con list to justify your decision. I hope you understand the relations between the limbic system and the prefrontal cortex. And this brings us to the late Antonio Damasio's groundbreaking study. He evaluated patients with damage to the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that we thought is associated with logic and reason. These patients had perfectly normal IQ scores. They could solve complex mathematical problems. They understood consequences abstractly. But in their daily lives, they were paralyzed. They couldn't decide which restaurant to eat at. They couldn't schedule an appointment without spending hours debating pros and cons. Why? Because they had lost their emotional connection to options. The most surprising discovery wasn't that emotions disrupt reason. It was that reason collapses without emotion. A brain without emotion isn't super-rational. It's often incapable of choosing. In other words, emotion isn't the enemy of reason. It is part of reasoning. Emotion is the biasing system that tells your cortex option 1 matters and option 2 doesn't. Without that bias, you're just a computer without a power button. Without emotion, you will stuck in an infinite loop of analysis. So let's back to the original question. Are you a limbic person or a cortex person? What am I saying is that this question is flawed. The real battle isn't between emotion and reason. It's between impulse and regulation. The real question is, how well do these two systems communicate inside your brain? Your genes may load the gun, but your experiences pull the trigger. The healthiest brains aren't the calmest. They're the best connected brains. Here's a better question to ask yourself. When the amygdala fires up, does your prefrontal cortex panic and shut down? Or does it step in and say, I see you, I hear you, but let's wait 3 seconds? The most successful people aren't ruled by emotion, and they aren't ruled by logic. They rule by neither of them. They are the diplomats managing the relationship between these two. So, when I was researching this, I kept asking myself, why do we love labeling ourselves so much? Maybe the answer to that question is labels like cortex person or limbic person give us excuses. For example, I'm just an emotional person, so I can't study math. Or I'm just too logical to connect with people. But biology doesn't care about your excuses. The strongest mind is not the one that silences emotion. It's the one that can listen to the emotions without obeying. Your future will not be determined by how emotional you are, but by what you do with those emotions. If you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. Don't try to kill your limbic system. You can't. It's not possible. And you wouldn't want to. Instead, build a better bridge to your cortex. Practice the pause and waiting. My name is Taimur, and this is Of Science and Other Demons. If this video made you think, I'd be happy if you subscribe. And the next time you feel that rush of emotion, just remember, you're not your first thought, you're the second one. Have a nice day.